Are you struggling with fear, depression, or anxiety? Are you in search of meaning and purpose? Would you like help navigating your current life circumstances? Tarot can help. Tarot is a powerful tool for healing, introspection, and spiritual awakening. The Esoteric Toolkit is a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science. It consists of tarot, numerology, astrology, and the Hermetic principles in conjunction with the modern science of consciousness. The revelation and application of this knowledge gives you the tools you need to help master your life, organize your mind, and overcome depression, fear, and anxiety. Learn to manifest your dreams and come into alignment with your highest self and the universe. Book your private one-on-one tarot reading today. Click the link in the description or go to www.theorderofchaosmagic.com. You can also find monthly tarot packages, a private Discord community featuring shadow work, and Mercury retrograde support groups, and much more by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theorderofchaos.
The following message is transmitted.
Welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. Today on the show, I have my good friend Nicole. And since the last time she was on this show, Nicole has moved to Salem, Massachusetts to open the Modern Magic Academy. It's a physical location in Salem. It's a school of magic. And today we're going to talk about teaching. Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been really excited to do this. So before we get into anything, I just want to say that last time you and I had a long talk and you did the astrocartography reading for me. I've mentioned this on the show a few times before, and I was really scared to move here. Like, I live in Alberta now, and I felt like this is going to be terrible. And then you told me it's actually going to be really good, and all these good things are going to happen for you because you know how to do astrocartography, which is a skill I really need to develop. But you were dead on correct. Everything that you said was exactly spot on. I got here. I found a great job. Everything you told me is going exactly as it is. So it's amazing. So thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome. It's such a fun thing to do. And it's something that sometimes I offer as a standalone service, but sometimes I just kind of work it into my regular half-hour or hour-long readings, depending on what the focus of topic of discussion is. So it's so much fun. Now I'm planning trips with it and everything. It's great.
I gotta get into that.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I really love astrology, but I'm a mid-level, I'd say, astrologer. There's so much to learn. There's always so much more. Even if you have a pretty great grip on all the basics, you're like, there's so much more. It's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to a class tomorrow night, actually, on Hellenistic astrology. I'm I'm just going to ruin everything for myself. All the what I thought I knew is going to get questioned again. It's when you look at Vedic astrology versus Western, and it's just, it's such a huge thing. Not unlike any other topic within the occult, for sure.
It's true. I do have a very strong feeling, it's not that I feel like I'm right, but to me, in the way that astrology and the way the world and the way people present themselves to me, in my understanding, it's the classical planets and full sign houses are by far the most accurate, but that could have everything to do with, it's a lens through which you see the world. But when I look at some of these other systems, they don't really make the same amount of sense to me. So I've always wondered if different people aren't attuned to different astrological systems.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess you'd have to look at a person's birth chart for that. Which birth chart to look at? I don't know, but yeah, for sure. I think some people are just more naturally adept. Isn't it Aquarius that's supposed to be really great with astrology? I would imagine if you have a bunch of Aquarius placements, maybe astrology is your thing.
I mean, I think Aquarius would be one of the signs that would be most interested in really pursuing that and deep diving into it, and that that ability to deep dive into something that other people might avoid, which is such an Aquarius trait, would really lend itself to learning astrology.
Yeah, my husband's an Aquarius and he's like a numerology like weirdo, like in a weird, like really intense way. It's kind of a boring way sometimes actually, but like it's fun. It's fun to like cross our interests with each other sometimes. Mm-hmm.
I fully agree. And I've also noticed, and this is just my observation, that men lean more towards numerology when it comes to, learning what I would call the algorithmic properties of reality. Um, and women seem to have like a way easier grip on astrology. It's like it's so much more intuitive to women. And like, I'm not saying that to like say it's a fact. I'm just saying that that's what it seems like to me based on my observation.
Yeah, that could be true. I mean, they talk about like math, like boys excelling at math in school versus girls being more language arts sort of based, and maybe there's that mythology piece that goes along with astrology and some of like the emotional, intuitive connections with the houses and these sorts of things. I don't know. There's some pretty awesome male astrologers for sure. I
There
mean,
are.
it doesn't always apply, but
No, absolutely not. Right. Like I've had a few on this show who I'm huge
Mm.
fans of, and I think they're amazing. I just, like this brings me to the topic, that we were supposed to be getting into, and this is in teaching magic. So I just launched my first course ever. I've been planning it for like almost a decade, because this was always the end goal, was to teach. And because the entire reason that I started the podcast, the entire reason that I do any of this, is because I want people to experience the same like relief and like joy that esotericism has brought me, and an understanding of myself and of the world, right? Because it really helped me with my mental health issues, because I had a lot. I got severe anxiety, I was depressed, and learning all this stuff, like I mean, I'm not anxious or depressed anymore. I'm not going to say they're a miracle cure, but I'm saying they really, really helped me, and I want to do that for other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's such a um, huge way of kind of diving into your own self-awareness and really that personal understanding of some of the areas of your life that you need to work on, and like how different magical tools and techniques can really alleviate a lot of pain for people, but also put you through a process that's like intentionally uncomfortable, right? In the same sort of way that going to the gym or starting some sort of workout routine, maybe with a trainer, would be like more intense than just like trying to go at it alone, right? I think having a magical teacher or somebody to guide you, it's like somebody's holding you accountable for the work and the study that you're putting in.
Yes. And a lot of people, um oh no, to get back to my original point, though, my class is overwhelmingly female.
Of course.
I mean, is yours the same way?
Yeah, I have all women in my class. But I think it depends, right? I think there definitely are a lot of men that are just are interested in going into different aspects of the occult, maybe, or just feeling like they have to be like going at it alone or having some sort of solo kind of quest. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's how I did it.
yeah, for sure. And
But
some people just don't want to ask for the support and the help. I find that with readings too. I love doing readings for men. And I feel like they get a lot out of it, but sometimes it takes a lot for them to book a reading. It's like 1 out of 10 of my clients are men. So,
yeah, about the same for me. And
mhm.
that's not to say that I'm not disappointed by that at all. I want to teach whoever wants to learn. I'll read for whoever wants to get a reading, but I would for sure like to see more men, working on themselves in this way, or experiencing, what I've experienced, because it's awesome. And I think studying magic has always been to me like this journey of individuation,
Mhm.
what would you call a spirit quest kind of thing, and I think that that's part of the male psyche that maybe is like been sidelined in a lot of ways, that maybe in the past was very important.
Yeah, and I think like for women, maybe the reason that we're seeing more wanting to gather in community is because there would have been more of a focus on spiritual connections within like female communities, you know, kind of like, not to say that your group is about like women's empowerment or anything like this, but I do think there's a draw to like learning with others in a bigger way when it comes to women's spirituality.
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. And I do respect, anyone out there who's studying this stuff completely on your own. Again, that's how I did it. But I would like people to not have to take 20 years like I did. I would like
Oh
people to get it right in 2 years. And that's what I've tried to accomplish with my course, is to develop a 2-year long program that will take you from 0 to adept and
yeah.
really understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I think that some of the trouble when you go it alone, and that was very much my experience as well, kind of starting this journey in high school, is that there's only so many like beginner books that you can read, and they make up like 80% of kind of the the market, I guess, when it comes to more like intro level stuff. And it's a lot of regurgitated information with various kind of different opinions along the way. And then that can become very overwhelming. I was totally guilty of being what people would call like an armchair witch for like a long time, just like consuming information because I had built up this like wall of anxiety of like fucking it up or like getting something wrong. And I think it was just because of how much information was out there. And I think learning in a group and kind of diving in and dissecting a lot of like these, you know, common myths or, you know, like I can't tell you like how many times I had these like weird, you know, being like 16 doing candle magic for the first time and being like, oh, I can't blow it out. I have to like, what am I gonna, you know, like it was just such a anxiety provoking thing, which obviously is the complete opposite of what you want to, like where you want to have your energy go when you're trying to manifest or when you're trying to bring something in. So
Yeah,
I find a
absolutely.
lot of my discussions with people are around like trust.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I do feel that now, this is somewhat thought of as maybe an unpopular opinion amongst magicians. I don't know if there are popular opinions amongst like the magical community. Like, I don't even know if we really have a community because there's so much argument, right? And
Yeah.
there's all these different like styles of magic. And for me, as a chaos magician, and someone who's pretty adamant about that, I don't believe that there's one correct way
Mhm.
for any of this stuff. I believe that you are in a relationship with the universe, and there's a language with which you can use to communicate with the universe. In fact, there are many languages, and that's what different magical techniques and practices are. They're different styles of communication. To say what is the correct way to do magic would be like, well, what's the correct language? There
Mhm.
isn't a correct language. There's just this language, and they're all made up.
Yep.
None of them have any basis in any reality other than the one we ascribe to it. And to me, that's magical.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I was actually talking to a client about this earlier today about like everybody's style of magic and because her admittedly her issue where she was stuck was like, I really just want like a step-by-step sort of like first do this, then do that. And we talked about how that was totally something that I could offer her. But that it was more important that we kind of got around why she needed such explicit instruction and why there was like maybe some resistance about trusting how she wanted to interpret certain workings that she was looking into doing. You know, and obviously there's certain traditions and magical paths where where you're going to want to like follow more of a procedural sort of, you know, I'm not definitely not encouraging people to like reimagine the LBRP. Like I'm not encouraging this sort of discussion, but I think to get started, it's just really important to like develop that confidence to even attempt some of these things.
I fully agree. I think that one of the hardest things, and this could go back to what we were talking about earlier about men and women, that a prerequisite to doing magic is getting over feeling silly.
Oh yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
have to be completely comfortable feeling ridiculous and feeling like you're doing something that if somebody saw you, you'd be so embarrassed. Like, you know what I mean? But
Totally.
at the same time, that's not what's actually happening. But I'm familiar with that feeling.
Yeah.
Like the first time I ever participated in any kind of group ritual, it was like, I still remember the ridiculous butterflies I had in my stomach. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? This is like, I'm not gonna, even though these people are all doing the same thing as me, I still felt like, oh my God, I'm being so ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I've definitely felt that myself. What has kind of helped, I think, for me personally, now that I do ritual like on a regular basis with people and lead groups and things like that, is leaning more into like the intuitiveness of creating sacred space, of calling in certain energy and that sort of thing. Trying to like remember a script or trying to remember some sort of like verbiage to say every single time. Like at the end of the day, you create your own little method and you end up saying similar things. But, sometimes I think speaking from the heart is super powerful within a ritual setting. And I really don't think like the gods or the powers that be or deities or whoever you're connecting with, unless it's in like a very specific, ritualistic setting for intended purpose. I think that they just care that you're there and that you've like shown up and are trying.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
they want you to try to communicate, and that attempt to communicate, that attempt to form the connection is what really matters. And then, I imagine, because with my tarot cards specifically, I have different relationships with each of my decks. Like they're different types of personalities, and there's not one rigid way to do it, and I feel like that's a good way of, because I think everybody experiences that when they get into tarot, that they realize that they have a particular relationship with their deck and they don't have to be very rigid about it, and that can lead way to this sort of understanding of the same thing applying in what we higher magic.
yeah, for sure. And like it's interesting. I have decks like that I have relationships like that with too. Like I have one that it's awful and I shouldn't, I'm like losing some credit or something for this, but I have like what I call my sticky deck. My sticky deck is like it's like this deck that kind of hangs out in the kitchen in like a little zippy bag. I'm pretty sure that's where I keep my like lighter and like I don't know, there must be some like crumbles of incense in there or something. But there's like my sticky deck, which is like my casual deck that occasionally gets cleansed and this sort of thing. But that I have that kind of common everyday sort of relationship with. It's kind of like a gentle energy or a gentle sort of spirit seems to be kind of coming through with that deck that doesn't require a lot of formality. But then I have my like fancier decks that I use for clients and I keep on shelves and that you're not sticky decks.
I definitely have, I don't want to call them favorites, because what I do when I have a client is I just, for the first minute of a session, I'm just letting them talk. And as they're talking, I'm my hand over here, they don't see that I'm just feeling for which one is the right one for this person.
Oh, that's cool.
What I'll say is that it's almost always either Deviant Moon, Murder of Crows, The Wild Unknown, or Santa Muerte. I rarely feel called to use the Crow Tarot or the Rackham Tarot, even though I love those decks and they're beautiful. And I'm like, I kind of wish that they would come forward more. I feel like they're sleepy decks that just hang out in the back.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like I also seem to like pull certain decks during certain seasons or something.
Oh,
Yeah, like the art or whatever might call to me during certain times of the year. And then I use Lenormand on top of tarot. I love Lenormand cards, so that's fun.
I don't even know what that is.
Like an oracle system that came out of France.
Ooh.
I want to say 17th or 18th century, but there was this kind of psychic tea parlor lady who was using like playing cards to give people readings, and then she adapted the like playing card system to have symbols. And I find, and they tell stories, whereas they're less like archetypal than the tarot, but they're really fun and they give a lot of specific information.
Very cool. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for some new rabbit hole to go down. So, on to the topic of gatekeeping and magic, because that's really what I want to get to. Right. I've had a number of emails and messages from random person named Freighter this or Freighter that telling me that, the message always goes the same way. It's like they message me to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent, and they like make silent in bold, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
Wow.
Yeah. No, there's a tremendous amount of that attitude
Didn't
around.
realize that you were such an oath breaker. What's going on?
Right. Yeah. No, I don't, I can understand that there was a time in our history where if you were to come out and say, this is what I believe and this is what I do, you would endanger yourself and others around you. But that's just not the case. What is the case, however, is that we are in the middle of a mental health crisis, a worldwide, population-wide mental health crisis, and that this information can help. And so, in my opinion, there's an obligation to proliferate this information, not to proselytize, but to make it available to anybody that wants to learn it in a way that isn't, behind 15 locked doors of symbolism.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with what you're saying. And I see the value of bringing people the information that they need to support themselves. At the same time, I do understand the value that comes from gatekeeping to some extent, with the idea of protecting people and like protecting vulnerable people from maybe information and practices that potentially could be damaging or potentially they're not ready for. What I
100%.
don't
Yes.
what I don't appreciate is some sort of overarching theme that like we can't be adults together and like decide for ourselves and also decide in community and through honesty about what is appropriate for kind of beginners and people who are just coming to this information, knowing that like ethically we're taking on a huge responsibility to make sure that the people that we're working with are given the right information. And if they choose to take certain paths, like let's just say shadow working, for example, like a shadow working practice, which basically, it's a therapy-based sort of practice.
Yes.
I always recommend that my students seek a mental health professional to oversee any of the work that they choose to do, magically speaking, because I'm not here to support people from a clinical kind of place. And it would be irresponsible for me to assume that I could do that. Right. So I think it's just about being smart, not being a complete dumbass and like trying to like, give people more than is required.
I agree. I think that kind of like a many years long psychedelic trip, it's best to have a guide in a lot of these areas because they can be very terrifying. So what would be, or what is one thing that you either warn or you're very careful with your students about?
A lot of things. And I don't want to say that as if I'm, perpetuating this like idea of fear and the occult or, magical practice and being overly cautious. We always start with basic psychic protection sort of work, understanding that there are energies that you probably don't want to align with, and I always leave it up for interpretation and for people's own belief systems to come into play about what that looks like. And I discuss it as from like a magical and spiritual perspective, this idea that, there can be dense energy, there can be lower vibrational energy that potentially brings in negativity into your life, etc. And then also this idea that, we carry around our own personal demons. Like we have our own mental things that we may want to protect ourselves from. What I mean by that is, getting into certain mindfulness practices, gratitude-based practices, and also visualizations that put you in that place of feeling safe and confident about achieving what you're trying to achieve through magic. Because the last thing you want is like somebody who's really freaked out about like fucking everything up, right?
Yeah. Well, because
So
that
it's not
fear will
despair.
interfere with your magic, and it'll manifest itself through
Totally.
your actions, right? So it is very important to, and this is why I like to teach the Hermetic principles first,
Yep.
right? Because I want my students to understand that you have to have a degree, at least and a little bit of an understanding of how to control your own mind before you start doing ritual.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I start with just, basic energetic practices, grounding, psychic protection methods. We get into a lot of different discussions on various types of like kind of beginner intro magic, creating kind of a magical lifestyle, because it's I think kind of irresponsible to assume that people are going to have time to create big elaborate rituals every day. At least that's not how I do my work. I love ritual, but it's not necessarily something that I can integrate all the time. So yeah, I think this gatekeeping topic is a big one, and there's value for it sometimes. And I certainly respect it within like oathbound tradition, because people know what they're getting into, right? It would be, I would never assume or advocate that the closed magical practices release all of their information. Like that's unreasonable. There is value to mystery, and there is value to not having that information and having to work for it within a certain group.
What you just said is so smart, and because it really flips this topic on its upside down, right? In a way that you look at it through that perspective. Yeah, that mystery of having to earn this magical knowledge and having to go through these gates is super appealing.
Of
It's
course.
appealing to me, right? Like I don't have the personality type to do it, but like I can think about it and think, yeah, no, I get that. I get why somebody want to do that. It's like learning a martial art, again, progressing through the belts and feeling like I earned this. This is where I am. I know where I am in the system, and I'm excited about what's coming next.
Mhm.
Totally. And I really hadn't considered that in quite a while. So I'm really glad you said it, because it seemed to have slipped my mind. But something that I've always believed is that something our society is really lacking is ritual, and that kind of ritual structure, yeah, it can provide a lot. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, there's also a generational thing, I think, going on with the gatekeeping piece, right? Because I think there's genuine fear and concern about like where the magical community is headed, right? Some of the older generations in this community, I think, are rightfully wanting to protect something that they've created, right?
Mhm.
But I think that they would, it if they were to participate and see some of the ways that some of this information is being discussed, it's almost like I think that the next generation of magical practitioners are bringing in more focus on kind of awareness of how big the magical community even is.
Mhm.
It wasn't until much later when I went off to university, and like instead of doing my papers, I was reading Aleister Crowley and like doing these other like things in like the university libraries. It wasn't until then that I was like, oh my God, like it's not just Wicca, like it's right, like because at
Yeah.
that time that was my exposure to magic, the
Mhm.
world of bookstores and the limited resources that we had on the internet at the time. So
Yeah, that's
mhm.
very true. Um, but I do, I do feel like my primary motivation is to help people understand this stuff because it's so good for you. And I can't really, I can't find a justification to not attempt to do that. And, and I hope not to like, I'm not trying to say my school's so great or anything, that this is the way to do it. But I do, my classes are very structured, and there's a progression system of degrees, right? But the thing is, anybody can join. If there's
Yeah.
a spot open, you can have it, right? And that, like, I feel like that's what's important, is that it's not exclusionary, in any way. It's just, if you want to learn this, you can. But you're absolutely right in everything you said about, progressing through that learning in a safe way, and having that structure being really helpful, and that, that element of mystery being really, it can propel you through magic, that desire for to know more about the mysteries, right?
Mhm.
Like, that was my primary motivation. And I think I went through a good bit of existential crisis when I reached a point where I'm like, I kind of know all the things I wanted to know. Now, I
No, what
know,
do
of
I
course, like you
do?
were
What do
saying
I
with
do with
astrology
all
in the
this?
beginning, there's so much more. But I remember being a kid and wondering, like, well, I wondered about things that I now feel I have a thorough understanding of.
Yeah.
And, it's like, wow, what
Yeah.
else is there? you know?
And why not explain it to someone? Like, it happens to me all the time. I'll get into a conversation with someone and they'll say something, and I know that I can redirect and kind of create a new learning opportunity for them, or I can leave it and let them go on this path for the next 5 years and kind of put their foot in their mouth, amongst other magical practitioners. I'm like, I'm just trying to like save you like some of the hassle of learning some of these things the hard way. Obviously there's value in like doing things the hard way too, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm just trying to, for my course, like I'm trying to create kind of what I would have wanted when I was starting, which was a safe community to bounce ideas off of other practitioners, to learn from somebody with more knowledge, but not necessarily affiliated with a specific magical tradition. And then to also just feel like I was going to come out of it with freedom and flexibility to create a practice in an informed way.
Hell yeah. And that's what a school should be. And that's so awesome. And so, what's cool, and I can't wait to hear about this, because since the last time you were on the show, you've moved to Salem.
I have.
And you've opened, I think you're there right now.
I'm here right now.
Your very own brick and mortar magical establishment.
Studio space. Yeah.
That's so you're not only doing online classes, right? Like my class is entirely held over Zoom. But you have a physical space, and that must be so amazing.
It's really cool. Just before we met up, I did a ritual for a couple of people who came out tonight. One of them was a minister. It's like so wild that these like people from different, religious paths, spiritual paths come out, and they're just curious about what witches do. And I'm happy to provide that space for them to see an authentic example of what it looks like. And it's pretty underwhelming, I think, probably compared to what other things there are to do in Salem, because obviously this is a tourist destination, right? But I think that there's some real like beauty and intensity kind of about the land here, and a reason that I've been kind of called here at this time, and just always wanted to offer my like services in a bigger way, and came to Salem for years and years, kind of like just as a tourist, as like a little spiritual place to recharge my battery. And it's so fun here and everything, but was always looking for a place like this, and I couldn't find one. So yeah, so I'm like, okay, here.
You couldn't find one really in Salem. You would think.
I mean, there's seances and table tipping, and there's psychics and people that are hosting other kinds of circles and stuff. But I would say that they're for more of an entertainment sort of thing.
Oh no. See, I've never been to Salem, and I really want to go, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna visit you. That's gonna happen, because I have to go there, but like I've always been afraid that would be how it is.
Yeah, you're gonna get your heart broken. You're worried about that. Yeah. I've had my heart broken by Salem a couple times, but I gotta tell you, it's not about like, the community here is amazing, because you can literally like totally let your freak flag fly and be whoever you want to be. Like, we've got the Satanic Temple here. We've got like, there's so much stuff, right? And nobody bats an eye at the idea of witchcraft here.
That's awesome.
It's super cool. And there are people doing amazing work and teaching amazing classes and stuff. But for ritual-based experiences, I always found that tough. Like, I would come over here with a really good friend of mine. We'd go every summer when I was still visiting, and we'd be like, okay, like this is the time that we're gonna seek out like some sort of coven that's having an open circle or something like, and it was really hard to find that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, it seems like it does take a really special type of person like yourself to offer that sort of experience with the correct intent. Not correct, but with an intention that isn't as financially motivated, perhaps, or wanting to put on a good show, right? Like, you have to be real about it, and that's what people who are really looking for magic, they're looking for. They're not looking for a Disneyland experience. They're looking for an experience that is authentic and feels authentic because it is authentic, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a real bravery to offer that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that what I'm hearing a lot of commentary from people is that, this is reassuring them that their practice is like valid, and that they're doing it's just kind of like almost like reaffirming for people that they are doing it right back at home. It's weird. It's weird. They're like, I'm seeing my practice here, like in your
But that
practice.
totally makes sense though.
So it's cool. It's kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, they're like, oh, I was expecting, like, and obviously, like, we have certain circles where I'm wearing a robe, or there's like, more tools involved, and maybe there's, some bells and whistles there, especially for Samhain and like during October and stuff. But I think that people are really kind of impressed to see how intuitive it is and how fluid it is and participatory. There's a lot of discussion that goes on, like kind of in the circles that I hold. So.
Well, I found throughout the years of my practice. Now, I started doing magic before YouTube existed, and I was very late to catch on to like that YouTube is cool. Like I think it was like 3 years ago. I was like, "Whoa, YouTube's pretty neat," you know. But I was always wondering, are there even other practitioners out there? Like, is this real? Is it just me just buying these books? I had no idea because there was nobody really doing it in Santa Cruz, California, where I grew up, at least that I knew of. And okay, that's not quite right because I had a few friends, but they were also doing their own thing, and I think also feeling the same way. And like I said earlier, there's that you have to get over feeling silly in front of your friends, and like I'm talking about when I was 15, 16 years old, and it's incredibly difficult, right? So I always was wondering, so I can totally see how someone would come to your place and experience you doing your thing authentically and say, wow, this is so much like what I envisioned or what I want to do or how I see this going, but I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And like there's lots of opportunity for people to participate too in my circles. So, typically we're calling in kind of elemental energy and creating sacred space together. Traditional sort of witchy slash some Wiccan influence there, I guess, even though I'm not a Wiccan. But yeah, this has just kind of been the way that I feel comfortable, and also the way that I feel like I can make it the most kind of inclusive environment. We don't usually call in any specific deities or spirits. It's usually elemental kind of energy, and the idea of like the divine masculine and feminine being present, or like that duality piece, to create balance within the space. And we discuss all this, and there's energetic cleansing that goes on before we go into the space, and some information, because I want people to know what they're taking part in.
For sure, that's super important. It's and like I might even consider having people sign a waiver or something, like I mean, I don't know, right? But ritual can be very, very powerful, can have a powerful effect on your psyche. And this is, occult psychosis is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what this particular phenomenon is called, but there's a thing that happens to people when they go visit, I believe it's Jerusalem or really any of the Abrahamic holy sites, where they develop this, all of a sudden they're overwhelmed with like the mythology of the religion. And a lot of people like will go to visit these places and then leave like thinking they're a reincarnation of Jesus or of one of the apostles. And this is like a well-documented phenomenon. And that happens to people in the occult. I've seen it happen. I've seen people do the same thing. They get involved in witchcraft and they go way overboard and like way down this ego trap of I'm the chosen one, kind of thing. And like they get so deep into it, and I see it mess them up. Right. And ritual can do that to you. And so it's important that people like have an understanding of what they might experience.
Yeah. And I think understanding how to protect yourself as an energetic being, and that being some of the core kind of foundational stuff that I talk about in my course, is super important. I also bring in, I don't like to ruffle feathers, and I generally keep like a pretty low profile when it comes to like the greater magical community. However, I always like to talk about red flags when it comes to what to expect out there, just based on my experience, based on other people's experiences, for the safety of like the women that I work with, but not just women, but anyone. I don't want anyone ending up in an abusive relationship with their like high priestess or something like this. Like, It totally
very
does.
recently in my circle, and I'm still so mad about it. And there are there are people out there who will use this to take advantage of you.
Totally.
There was a person who I'm not going to name, but was like part of an inner circle of mine, and he totally took advantage of one of my clients. And like I'm offering to be your sex magic mentor. Like, oh, get fucked. Like
Yeah.
I'm so mad about it. I'm so mad about it. But you know, and that's real. That's out there. There are predatory people everywhere in every area of life. You know,
Within the magical community, it becomes difficult because there's this idea of like not charging for services or information or teaching. But it's like, at least when there is a fee, right? You know what the exchange is. When there is no actual monetary fee, which, don't get me wrong, we can get into all the reasons why that's not okay. But at least it's a very clear exchange and there's consent there, right? Like the person's like, I'm paying you to help me. And that's the exchange. Whereas like when you're joining these kinds of groups where things are free and
they're
it's like,
not free.
it's not free. There's
It's not
something,
free.
there's some
They
sort of
want
an
to influence you.
expectation. Yeah, it's
A lot of times they want you to believe what they believe. Right.
either
And as a
that
chaos
or
magician,
there's
I'm
a,
very against that. I don't want you to believe what I believe. My beliefs are mine. Don't try to take mine. You have yours. Mine are mine. You know, but there are lots of people out there. I mean, this is a very normal human thing to really want to convince everyone else that you're right.
yeah.
You know, and that's easy as an occultist to take advantage of that kind of position and declare yourself the high priestess of an order, and everyone should do what I say because spirit told me. And I'm so against this. Now there are people out there who are authentic about it, and there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong. But you know, and when it comes to charging, and I'm very adamant about this, because like, if I were to offer free readings, if I were to say from now on I'm not charging, well, I would be overrun completely by people asking me about their twin flame. And I would lose all the people who like are sincere and are coming to me because they feel that I have helped them in the past, perhaps, or that I'm authentic, or that this would be a valuable experience for them. They'd be a million people back in the line of people who want to ask me, "Are you sure he's not my soulmate? Are you sure?"
Yeah.
And it weeds out people who aren't looking for what it is that I'm hoping to offer.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah, and that's
100%.
important. Yeah.
I think so too. I think that it kind of sets some sort of boundary around what you're like, what you intend to teach, and then also what your student is bringing to the table and like their commitment level, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I also don't believe that anything should be free. I mean, personally, like I don't, to make my stance sort of clear, I don't appreciate the late stage hyperinflated capitalism that we exist in. I don't like it, but I do believe in exchange of work and effort, and a way to lubricate the economy. Like, I believe in the concept of money in a more sort of like classical sense. Again, I don't like the way the economy is. Obviously, I don't think things are really working. I don't like that, less like a 0.1 of the 0.1% of the population has everything. I don't think it should be that way. But I do think that if you want something, you should have to go out and work and earn it. I don't think that, I don't believe, the only things that I believe should be free are things that I consider to be human rights, which would be, one of those is healthcare. And because you're a Canadian, I mean, how's that been for you living in America? Because we've switched places. I'm an American living in Canada.
I know. Yeah, it's weird. Definitely. I have been lucky enough to not have to, pay for pocket for any services or anything as of yet. But yeah, it's kind of weird for sure. But then again, people are dying in the emergency room, like in Canada right now. So like, it's kind of confusing. It's
yeah. No one's figured it out just yet. But I do think that every human being on planet Earth, that this should absolutely be the goal, is that every single person on this planet has access to food, water, healthcare, and reasonable shelter. Like, access to the opportunity for these things at the very least. I don't believe in, I'm not a socialist, and I'm not interested in equity. I'm a person that thinks you should have to earn things, right? But you should have access to your basic needs, because if you don't have access to those basic needs, how are you going to earn anything? You're not. You're fucked. And I've been there. I was homeless twice in my life. Once on the streets of San Francisco when I was like in my early 20s, and it was awful, right? And in the States too. I remember at the time, not only did I have a full-time job, but I was also homeless because I had a full-time job in San Francisco, right? And that doesn't mean anything. Like the rents there are, you're paying $2,000 a month for a studio and you're splitting it with somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I was told that I didn't qualify for any kind of aid because I made too much money, but the amount of money I made could not pay rent, food, anything. That has to stop.
Yeah.
That's not an opportunity. So I want that to be fixed more than anything. And I don't know how to fix it, but I would hope that that's our goal as a society. But then after that, like if you want to, I think it should be limitless potential to go out and earn and adventure for whatever else you want in life, but you should have to go out for that.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think this is a whole other can of worms about value, like teaching and value and this sort of thing. But, I think people who are drawn to the occult and drawn to magic and want to learn, I think everyone has the right to choose how they want to do that and what they want that experience to look like. If I don't want to hang out at someone's house, and like and participate in a potluck and I don't know, whatever the things are, right? With different traditions. If I don't want to do that, if I just want to like learn from somebody that I admire and that I like really value the content that they create and their opinion on things, and I like the way that they communicate, and maybe I find them very easy to understand, then that's my choice as a practitioner to choose to invest in that experience if that's what I want. Yeah. If that's what I want my journey to look like, then I think that that's valid.
Yeah. And I think that also, here's just another thing. Okay. Now I guess I'm wrong. I was about to say that that boundary of charging for readings and for your services, has that degree of keeping you separate from cults. But then I realized, no, there are plenty of cults out there stealing money from people. That's like the main thing they do. So, but they don't do it. It's not charging you. It's like, oh, you have to donate. Bullshit like that, right? But I do think when there's no, this is what it costs for the service. There's professionalism in that.
Well, and there's clarity around like how you're going to work through the material as well, because I definitely know that there's been experiences that I've had, friends have had in the greater magical community, seeking various magical traditions and being told, well, we just don't know if and when you'll ever be a third degree within this tradition. That will be up to our discretion when we feel you are ready, these sorts of things. And I'm like, this sounds like a weird, toxic relationship sometimes.
It does.
Right? Manipulative sort of experience. And one that really creates a lot of like a hierarchy, right?
Yes.
So, all that being said, I probably will end up petitioning another tradition one day. If after this podcast interview, people are like ever interested ever again. But like, I do see so much value in it, but I also see how it is a system that potentially can set people up for some discomfort, and that there should be options. There just should be options.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I hope that I'm doing this right, because I do want to, like I said earlier, want to offer people that sort of structure. But in my way of doing things, you take a year of class and then you take an exam. Yeah. And if you pass the exam, you're in the next year. Mm-hmm. I mean, I set it up just like school, because it is school. So a year of class, that's 1 degree. You take a practical exam and a written exam. And if you pass, then you move on. And if you don't pass, then I will coach you until you do pass. Yeah. Because that's my job. And if you didn't pass it, I failed. So I'm going to coach you until you're able to pass. I will not just pass you. I'm not going to do that, because that would be, I'm not going to be paying anyone lip service. Like I want you to be able to do this. If you can't give an accurate tarot reading at the end of the first year, then we have more work to do.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but I want to do the work and I want you to pass.
Mm-hmm. And I think like receiving payment from clients and trying to create a program that's centered around the success of somebody who's approaching a magical path, like that's a lot of work, right? On our part too, to try to design something like that. And it's going to be,
years.
yeah. And it'll continue to evolve, I'm sure. And you'll continue to change things and edit the way that you do certain things and update your own knowledge and all of that. And that investment, I think, is why the gatekeeping piece is unnecessary, because it's like, you know, it's all very clear and upfront about what's happening and what the expectations are going to be, rather than like that shroud of mystery, I think, that exists within like other ways of gaining and accessing information. You know, there's limitations certainly to like what I'm willing and able to offer people within my course in this system. But the hope is that they're going to come out feeling really in control of going out there and continuing their journey, and like feeling aware of how huge the magical world is, how to protect themselves within it, how to not fall for like bogus, stupid crap that like exists. And then also to kind of understand and know your way around things, ethically speaking. I was just talking to somebody the other day and they were very interested in my course, but they were like, just want to make sure that it's all like love and light and that there's not anything that's dark-sided that will be taught in the course. And I very explicitly explained that even though that's not part of my personal practice, it's unwise for me to not discuss baneful magic. Yeah. Right?
100%.
It's Absolutely. Not part of my personal practice because I've got like, there's you know, I'm blessed to not have it be part of my personal practice.
Yes.
Right. It's like a privilege thing for me. And I totally, I like open up to that, but bring in other people who can discuss it and who I advocate for and know who to contact if I'm ever in a position where I need that support. But that's always my way, is like bringing in outsiders and being like, I don't know about this, but this person does. So
I'm doing the exact same thing, because hexing is also not a part of my practice. And again, I feel you put that so perfectly. I am privileged. I am blessed to not have that be a part of my practice. But the value of it as knowledge is like, I'm not going to throw away any knowledge. So I'm having Black Witch Dyra come in and teach a whole course on hexing. And just like I'm having my friend Lucas, who's on the show, Devil's Advocate, he's going to be teaching invocation and evocation, because these are not areas in which I am an expert. I'm an expert in the areas in which I have chosen to teach. And if I don't know it, but I feel like it's valuable, then I'm going to find an expert and they're going to come teach that course.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of the value comes from too, from like creating kind of a paid system or whatever, is that understanding of like where your limitations are as a teacher, and you know, creating that community and that discussion and that analysis of another person's perspective. Bringing in other experts is always such a good idea.
It is. And also, I'm not the type of person to go out there and say, oh, hexing is bad or hexing is wrong. I'm not at all. I think that especially like, you know, young people and people who are going through abuse. If you're going through abuse, hex that motherfucker. Do it.
Yeah.
Like, get rid of them. There are ways to do this magically, you know, that you can do in private that might be safer for you than, you know, other options. And I fully think people should know how to protect themselves with magic if they need to. And that's not to say just magical defense, but let's say you have a toxic piece of shit in your life that's got to go and you're not able to get away. Well, then hexing is a valuable tool for you.
Totally. And I think that there is this very limited mindset of what it looks like to hex. And I feel like sometimes people get bogged down with this idea of like, well, I don't want to hurt this person physically. And it's like, well, that's kind of part of what this could look like, but it could also be this very cathartic emotional piece of like presenting or projecting a lot of information towards something that's traumatic in the sense of like wanting to banish that, or wanting to really kind of transmute it, transform it, or like tear it down, like destroy it, right? So I was telling somebody this the other day. I'm like, just because baneful magic is not part of my ongoing practice, I am not one to judge someone for like hexing their rapist or something like that.
No.
That emotion needs to be released, right? And who am I to say? Like, I was also thinking of it like, let's say that you brought someone to court and there was a huge debacle. Somebody murdered someone close to you or whatever. They go to jail. That's justice, right? That person has been imprisoned and you can celebrate that. That's success, right?
Yeah, but what about the ones who don't?
What about the ones that don't? Or what about like, why couldn't I celebrate the fact that I've created this really intense boundary around a person? Okay, I've interfered with their free will. So would setting them off to jail, or getting somebody to beat them up or something. I don't know. Like, there's just so many facets to this. I really think that it's like, again, it's not something that I'm an expert at by any means, but it's something I find really interesting.
Yeah, I do too. And again, like, I'm excited for the course that Dyra's going to teach, because I'm going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just, I am very, as a human being, I am ruthless about who I will cut out of my life, and for that reason, I don't have a lot of reasons to be going around doing hexes. I don't carry a lot of anger, because I'm extremely lucky,
Mm-hmm.
and that extreme luck that I have, and I don't know, like, numerologically speaking, my birthday is August 8th. I'm 8/8. Like, and I've always carried a lot of that 8 luck energy, and Leos are quite lucky as well. But many years ago, when I first got into sigil magic, one of the very first sigils that I ever made, and the one that I recommended that everybody else make, was based on the phrase, "I am always in the right place at the right time."
Mm.
And it's I've continued to make it and like remember that one and burn it into my brain, and it becomes more and more true every day. For example, coming here, which was totally against my will. I had to move here, but then I talked to you about it, and you're like, "This is going to be great for you," and then boom, it is.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, astrocartography is so cool. I love it so much. And like when we moved to Salem, of course I drew my astro chart and took a look, and I have a big line of the sun that it's just a little bit north of Salem, but I like to say it's kind of, it's in this area. So I have past life stuff that I'm working through here. And then interestingly enough, my dad, he doesn't know a whole lot about his side of the family. And we had gotten him one of those like ancestry spit things to like look where your family comes from or whatever. And it came back to saying that he had ancestry of people who came over on the Mayflower. And so now I'm on this like weird ancestry genealogical kind of thing where I'm piecing things together from this part of the world and my dad's family. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird astrology, past lives, locations. It's cool.
It is cool. And it becomes difficult to explain at right about the level where you were just talking about, right? Because we start using words that are more rooted in like a sort of objective spirituality than like an inclusive sort of way of talking about things, right? And so that I find that as a teacher, that's where it gets a little tricky, right? And I find, even though I don't believe this, really, I'm very open to the possibility. I don't believe in simulation theory as like an objective fact. I find it so incredibly useful to describe magic to other people and say that reality is algorithmic. And just like the social media apps that we're all using and we're all part of, like it's just part of modern society that are algorithmic, and they're manifesting essentially like a particular viewpoint to you all the time. You can, if you're smart, if you're a creator, if you're into this, then, and you learn these things, and you can leverage that algorithm and create viral posts. People don't just necessarily get lucky. They're very good at this. Well, if you want to do that in the physical plane, in reality, and you learn these algorithmic properties of the universe that are, astrology, numerology, and this science of manifestation, amongst other things, then you can leverage it to go viral here in reality in a way, or to manifest whatever you want, to have something reflected back to you. Like, it works. It really, really works. And we have a long way to go when it comes to developing more and more language to describe this more and more accurately. And that's the real challenge, right? Because I firmly believe that we're at this point where science and magic and occultism are really coming together. They've been coming together like all throughout the century, but they're really coming together now. And when the language is developed to say, oh, we're talking about the same thing, then we're going to be able to describe it in a way that's like I've believed since I was a kid that one day luck would be quantifiable by physics. And I still believe that. We just haven't figured that out yet, but it's there somewhere.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I've had like a core belief that I've held on to like that, but yeah, that's really cool. I think there's got to be something with the age of Aquarius moving in, or that has been moving in, and that perspective changing for sure.
Yeah. And and I think it's so, to me, and I'm sure to you and to many other people that we know, when you live a magical life, you become very accustomed to it, and you just understand, like, this is just the way it is. I might not be able to describe it perfectly, but I'm fully aware of it. I see it all day, every day. And that's the best way to gain this knowledge, is just to live it and to become accustomed to it, so that it doesn't. I don't know about you, but I haven't had that. The first decade into my practice, I would still have thoughts like, is this real, or am I just full of shit?
Yeah, for sure.
And I haven't had that thought in a very long time. I know it's real.
Yeah, I think that's a huge kind of magical milestone, of trusting kind of in spirit and in, the information that you are receiving intuitively, or, just in what you're doing with your practice, trusting that your manifestations are on the way, that all of that kind of thing. I think like living in a place like Salem, it reminds me of that every day, because, it's literally in my face. Like there's a lot of occult resources, magical shops, walking down the street, there's witches everywhere, and like pentacles and the windows. And it's very apparent that like people are doing magic here, So it kind of feels like it does like light a bit of a fire under me to like create something and make something happen on the daily, and stay kind of in that mindset. But it's interesting because you were talking about when people visit old Christian sites, or like people going to Jerusalem and having these kind of really intense spiritual experiences. I kind of think that energetic people who are sensitive to energy, witches, occultists, whatever, also have experiences like that in places like Salem, in places like Sedona, Arizona, New Orleans, like all these places.
Sedona is a big one. Everybody talks about Sedona. It's like it's this interdimensional portal, and it totally could
weird.
be. I mean, it's weird, right? It's very new agey, but I'm interested in going there because I think that, okay, something's going on. Maybe it isn't aesthetically pleasing to me, but as an occult researcher, I can recognize something is going on here.
Oh, it's huge. When I went there, it was like I don't get headaches. Like that's not a thing that happens to me regularly, but I had this splitting headache like the entire time I was there. And it felt energetic. Like it felt like there was just something there that was messing with like the physical energy in my body. I was hypersensitive. It felt otherworldly, very much. Whereas places like New Orleans feel like the dead, right? Like that's the dead.
Yes. And I lived there for 2 years, and it was,
Salem's like that too. Salem's kind of like that too.
I always felt like, because I lived in New Orleans, not to indulge in my magical practice. I was actually taking a break from my magical practice
in New Orleans.
Well, but here's the thing. I was there on my apprenticeship from culinary school. I was a chef. That's what I was there to do. I was there to learn to cook, which is a whole other kind of magic. So don't get me wrong. But this is what my
Yeah.
point was, is that I'm a firm believer in fate and destiny, and that they are two different things. You have a fate and you have a destiny, and you have everything in between. And everything may happen for sort of a reason, but it's not predetermined. Your life isn't predetermined, but there is the Tao, or something akin to the Tao, and we are going in a direction. And you might not land in this particular spot. That might not be your exact future, but you're going to land somewhere in the general vicinity of that spot, you know? And I do believe now that my desire to move to New Orleans and to do that and to just soak up that culture for the time that I was there had everything to do with my magical practice. I just didn't realize it consciously at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting because I thought that the second I got here, because there are so many resources, you know, we have like the OTO is here, and we've got people training in ceremonial magic and different kinds of, like, lots of different magical traditions, basically. I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is where I'm going to go and do some sort of like kind of more high level training or experience. And something's telling me to just hang on and like not go crazy like a kid in a candy store here, because there's not that I'm feeling like there's anything to be concerned about or protect myself from, but I think I just need to like lean into my own practice in like a bigger way. And that's kind of what's happening by showing it off to people.
I agree so hard, especially just like knowing you and through like all the talks we've had. I feel that like you are not a student anymore. And that's not, I'm not saying that you or I or anyone who's out there teaching is like has mastered this shit. That's not what I'm saying. I do, you know, I wouldn't be teaching if I weren't very confident in what I'm teaching. And of course that I am, and I know that you are too. But you know, I think that you should do exactly what you're doing. I think it's awesome. I
I
love that
think
you
I've
have your
just
own
got
space.
Thank you. I think I've just got this like Capricorn thing going on where I'm like, yeah, but what about my magical resume? I have to
My
prove to people
magical
that I like know
resume.
what I'm talking about. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's my magical resume. Okay. I have 33rd degree black belts in both armchair psychology and quantum Scientology. Okay. That's my magical resume right there. Like, it's, come on. Like, who cares? Right.
I
Like,
know.
you know,
Like,
it's,
this is
you
how
know
I've
what
made
you
some
know, and
life
you know that you know it.
choices. I went to U of T not because I like loved the school, but because I thought it was gonna like be the best looking option. This is just part of that like 29th degree Capricorn bullshit that I'm working through.
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, and you have that awesome intensity of a Capricorn. Like, you want to build something, but that, you know, but think about it that way, right? What do Capricorns do? They build. Capricorns are builders. They create structure. And what are you doing? You're creating the structure. You're the only practitioner I know of all of and I am so blessed to be friends with so many high level practitioners. It's outrageous. It's outrageous that I know Peter Carroll. It's outrageous that I know you. It's outrageous that I got to talk to Matt Oren on this show. Like, who the fuck am I? You know? I'm nobody, and I get to talk to all these amazing people, and it's like, it's incredible. But I digress. Capricorns build structure, and they create a thing, and that's exactly what you're doing. You know, you
Yeah.
might have that desire for structure, but like you got to see that you're creating it, and in a physical space. Everyone else is online or writing books, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally cool, but you took it to a physical location.
Yeah, I
You have
know.
4 walls,
I
Capricorn all the way.
I know. I'm excited about it. It's you know, I also have my North Node in Aries in the 10th house, so I am supposed to do something
Oh
where
damn!
yeah, so that's that I feel.
Highly motivated.
Yeah, yeah. But like Aries energy is so different than Capricorn energy. Capricorn's like the struggle. Aries is like the
Aries is a
race.
bullet leaving a
Yeah,
gun.
yeah.
Aries is Lightning McQueen.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Capricorn is
Slow and
Capricorn
steady
is
with
slow, and it wants to build a foundation and it wants to stay in the house that it built, right? So like, yeah, it's a lot of conflicting energy there, but like, but look what you can do with it.
yeah.
Look at where you've gone and what you built.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, right? And if this isn't, you know, if I wonder if I have any listeners out there who don't believe in astrology, but you know, I would hope, and my big hope for this show is that it does reach people who think that everything we do is total bullshit, and maybe you know, open them up to the idea that, you know, because I notice a lot of time that the things that really turn people away from occultism are like a total lack of understanding, right? Like people say like astrology is bullshit because there aren't only 12 personality types. Yeah, there aren't. There's not
That's
12.
100%
There's like
true.
it's like I can't do the math. We're talking about 12 signs, 12 houses, and in my system 7 planets and essentially infinite combinations,
Yeah.
right? But in an algorithmic way that can make them understandable,
Yeah.
right? You're not your sun sign.
No.
Your sun sign is like one part of what makes you you, and it's a part that people are aware of. But fucking newspaper horoscopes and telephone scammer psychics
Mhm.
are destroying this industry, right? Like not industry. I'm sorry. This field of study of work of being, occultism in general. Like I hope that through this show I can bring to people like a more nuanced perspective of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
I think so. And I think that with kind of that like oversaturation, if you want to call it, of like, people just being so interested in astrology, and so there being like a lot of resources out there, and people even scammers and stuff. This is just bringing awareness kind of to the greater magical world. And I hope that encourages people to start doing their own research and kind of getting to know like, oh yeah, like daily horoscopes are bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not to throw shade at anybody who like writes horoscopes. I'm sure there's some value in in how they're doing that predictive work. But if it was me looking at my daily horoscope, I'd be looking for my rising sign, I'd be looking at my moon sign. I'm playing this game with myself of trying to make it make sense because I know how deep it can get within astrology. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that through a daily horoscope, you may be able to offer a scenario that can serve as a type of symbolism for something that might be similar to something that's going on in the life of that person who maybe be that sun sign. But like I said, like you said, I'd be looking for my ascendant also. But it's not going to be that exact thing, and they present it as if it will be, and that's what sucks, right? Like it could be easy to tweak horoscopes in a way where like they're at least slightly more accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
I think, people becoming aware of things like astrological transits, the Saturn return, all of these kinds of bigger
This motherfucking Mercury retrograde that we're in right
Mercury
now.
retrograde. Yeah. And I think, Mercury retrograde is a great example. Most people kind of know what that means now, right? Like even people who are not into spirituality at all are
How about Friday the 13th? Mercury retrograde, by the way.
Friday the 13th. It was fine. It was pretty uneventful.
I started my day with a flat tire.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was an okay day. Busy day.
I've never believed that Friday the 13th is unlucky. It's just a neat day. For me, numerologically 13, I mean, this isn't really numerology, it's tarot, it's the death card. Right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, right? It's the day that the Templars were executed. And but like really what it is my favorite movie ever.
The movie Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a Jason fanatic when I was younger. I don't watch as many horror movies anymore, but I loved that series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever watched that series. That's
it's so good because it's so bad.
Yeah.
Like if you like cheesy, hokey, terrible horror movies, and I don't know why so many people love those, but like there's some charm to them. Like it's especially the first two, they're so good.
That's cool. Yeah, we're like my husband and I are really into like psychological sort of thrillers and stuff, but he takes like a weird conspiratorial, so like I don't know. It's like conspiracy stuff, different, like he loves like Eyes Wide Shut and like these kinds of movies.
Oh,
And
Stanley Kubrick.
yeah, these kinds of heavy films.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, this occult symbol." I'm like, "No. Like we get into these debates while we're watching things together." Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm sure that you're both right a lot of the time, right? Like because
I
there
don't
is
know.
that, right? But I'm like you. I choose when people start telling me, like when you're 7 layers deep in a conspiracy theory. I'm like, I can't anymore,
It's too
bro. I
much.
can't. It's too, yeah, there's you're connecting dots that aren't necessarily there.
That's how I
And that's where I'm like, okay, if the dots that you're connecting aren't like clear lines between each other that I can see very, like plain as day, then I'm very skeptical.
yeah.
Because you get down to that layer and you're like, yeah, and this means this. And the one that I really can't stand, the one that makes me feel like, oh man, these people need to get help. And I'm not saying this about your husband, by the way. I'm just talking about Facebook, okay? Is when they say that there's a large population of people out there who seem to believe that everything that's in a movie is like the Illuminati trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stop it. It's a fucking movie. Shut up about the Matrix.
Right?
Stop it. It's a fucking movie. It's a good sci-fi movie that I enjoy because there's like bullets and guys go like this and it's a cool movie. But like it's not this super deep metaphor for the conspiracies that we're all fucking, it's like, oh god, just stop it. Stop it. Stop
This
it with
is
the
like
lizard people.
Aquarius problems though, right? Like the red pill, blue pill thing. Like I feel like this is just something I don't know, my husband's really into this kind of stuff and I don't know. He's just he's open-minded. His wife's a witch and he's okay with it and like that's cool. It's nice to have like the differences and also like to see him kind of showing more interest in stuff since we've moved to Salem a little bit. Like he's kind of like, oh, maybe I should like join some sort of class or something. Because I'm like encouraging him for my own, secret reasons, I guess, of just wanting to like
Yeah.
just wanting to like, oh, I'll come to that class or
Yeah.
have that
Yeah. Well,
together.
and again, my belief is simply that you can leverage this knowledge to make reality work in your favor. And what is everybody out there looking for? Through my day job, I have access to very, very high level sales training. And I'm very grateful for it. Now, I'm not part of the sales team at my job. It's just something that my boss is cool enough to offer to everybody, right? Because it's beneficial. But everybody out there, they're paying huge ticket prices to learn how to leverage reality in your favor. And I'm like, that's called magic. You can call it whatever you want, right? But like as part of this sales training, like they don't use the word synchronicity, but they talk about synchronicities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's looking for this. Everybody wants to find a way to leverage reality in their favor, but there's so many people who are uncomfortable with the term magic. They're like, no, it has to be something, that's like this new proven science. And which I think is so funny because there's so many people in my life who are like, science proved that. I'm like, science is a process of continually finding out that you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's what science is. So don't tell me that science proved jack. Okay, because every couple of years, science is like, we were wrong. Here's what it really is.
Yeah.
And so what are the chances that you're exactly right this time? And that's not to say that I love science, but I understand that it's a process and that we're on a journey to a place getting closer and closer and closer to the truth. But when you start talking about science like it is the truth and has been the truth for this long time, it's like you don't understand science.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, it's very much, I think, how we're coming into things within the greater magical community and like the connections and understandings that some of like the magical minds of the past and of certain societies and things, how they would have portrayed and made connections. So I think, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm really fascinated to see like what the world of magic is going to look like in the next 20 years, especially with the amount of information that's accessible. I feel like there's people out there that are learning what took me 10 years to learn in 2 years, and that's amazing. And I kind of wish that I would have had access to information like that in a way that made sense, with community and all these other things. I probably would be a different practitioner right now. Not that I'm unhappy with where I am in my journey, but it's interesting.
It is, yeah. And I mean, on that note, that's about all the time we've got. It's been so cool talking to you again. I always love chatting. And yeah, I love your space. Even the little bit of it I can see there, it's incredible. I'm so excited for everything you're doing, and I can't wait to get out there. But to everyone out there listening, like if you're interested in learning magic, there's lots of schools, there's lots of places you can go. But you could check out my school, you can check out Nicole's school. We both really enjoy teaching, and we're passionate about it, and we want you to have access to this information, right? And I think that that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The more the merrier.
Yeah.
Information is good.
Yes. And I want to say also before we cut out, the one thing that I enjoy about your, I follow you on Instagram, and I look at most of everything you do when I get a chance. And like something that I love about your school is that you never make these extraordinary claims of you're going to manifest this or that. And like so many people are doing that. And I feel like that although it may be like a intelligent sales technique,
Yeah.
is not, it doesn't strike me as being authentic, and it doesn't strike me as being like someone who's really there to educate you. They just want, not just, but there's a disingenuousness to that.
I can't make bold promises about who you're going to be after a year of working with me, but if you're paying attention, participating, and trying to make the most out of the content and the community that we try to create within the course, you're not going to be the same person coming out of the course. I would like to think that everyone who really gives it their all is coming out of it with a really confident approach to how to navigate the world of magic and create a custom practice.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Like one last thing, then we'll cut out. What is your favorite thing about teaching? Like if you just had to pick one thing.
Oh, so I don't even think I prefaced this, but I was a school teacher for 10 years. So I'm always trying to like move out of that, like I'm a school teacher vibe. And like, I don't want to like talk down to people or treat people like kids or whatever, but I try to, I always just try to have fun and like, remember that I'm still learning and explain that to my students and make it a very collaborative kind of effort. I love good conversation with my students. I love prompting with questions and creating kind of activities and things that are going to keep people really engaged. My favorite thing about teaching, I think, is hearing feedback from people that feels inspired, that feels like they're excited, that maybe I lit some sort of fire inside them to make them less intimidated by what's available. I think just like helping people feel more confident and comfortable in their practice. That's the biggest blessing, I think. Yeah.
I totally agree. Seeing your students like seeing their not as like their practice improve, that's great, but seeing them like be excited about it and like really enjoy it, I think that's really what does it for me, is just seeing people excited about magic, right? And success with magic is something that takes time for some people. Some people have ridiculous success immediately. It's just like anything. Just like some people sit down at a piano and they can just do it. That certainly exists. That wasn't me. I had to work for it, right? But the excitement about it, about the process and the possibilities and the mystery.
Yep. Yeah, and I love getting feedback and seeing people, like sometimes like former students will send me pictures of their altar and like just be like, oh, like look what I did today, and like this is so beautiful and I'm so proud of the way this looks, and like you'll never believe who I feel like is connecting to me like in terms of deities. And I just hear all these updates and stories and it's just super cool. I have a former student, she's just amazing. She created a whole fashion line based on like the aesthetic of like a deity that she worked with and channeled while we were doing my class.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
It's like horseback riding gear because she was working with the goddess Epona, and like it's like fucking cool. And I'm just thrilled that like this connection with spirit led to this huge project coming to realization, and like now this is going to be like next level amazing for her. So
that's awesome. Yeah, so cool. All right. Well, thank you, Nicole, so much for being on the show. This has been awesome, and I will talk to you again next time.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.